Emma and Daniel had planned the trip for months. A week in an isolated cabin by the lake, far from work emails, traffic, and the endless drone of city life. The rental website promised silence, nature, and absolute privacy. And at first, it was exactly that. The water shimmered like glass beneath the morning sun. The pines whispered lazily in the breeze, and the couple laughed as they unpacked wine bottles, board games, and a carefully curated stack of novels. On their second day, the caretaker stopped by briefly, a gaunt man with deep lines etched into his face. He said little, just handed them the keys and muttered, "Stay inside after dark. The woods aren't the same at night." They laughed it off as local superstition, the kind of eerie folklore that came with any remote cabin. The cracks began subtly. The generator sputtered once, flickered, then steadied. The cell signal that was full when they arrived now vanished completely. No bars no matter where they stood. But the air still smelled of pine and the lake still glittered, so they chose to ignore it. That evening, as the sun sank into the tree line, Emma paused at the window. For just a second, she thought she saw a figure standing among the pines. Motionless, watching. She blinked and it was gone. She told herself it was nothing, just her imagination playing tricks. But in that silence, she couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't as alone as they thought. The third night began with a storm. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the shutters until they slammed against the cabin walls. When the generator finally died, the silence inside was absolute, until a low scraping sound echoed from the porch, like wood dragging against wood. Daniel lit a lantern and opened the door just a crack. The porch was empty, but the welcome mat had been moved, dragged halfway across the deck, leaving faint, wet streaks behind. He shut the door quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle even to his own ears. With no power and no signal, they tried to sleep. But Emma woke in the dead of night to a sound she couldn't place. Not the storm, not the trees. It was softer, like bare feet shuffling across the cabin floor. She reached for Daniel, but his side of the bed was empty. Her breath caught in her throat. She whispered his name, but the only answer was a creak from the hallway. Gathering her courage, she pushed the bedroom door open. There was Daniel, standing motionless at the end of the hall, staring at the front door. His face was pale, his eyes glassy. He whispered hoarsely. I thought someone knocked." Before Emma could answer, 3 sharp raps echoed from the other side of the door. Slow, deliberate. No one should have been able to reach them out here. No one. They didn't open the door. Instead, they shoved a dresser against it, their hearts hammering in the dark. All night, the knocks came and went, sometimes soft, sometimes violent enough to rattle the hinges. By dawn, silence returned, but the dresser bore fresh gouges, long parallel marks carved deep into the wood. With the generator still dead, they scavenged canned food and bottled water, rationing like castaways. But survival became secondary to fear. Each night brought new horrors, footsteps pacing the roof, whispers that seemed to seep through the walls. Once, Emma swore she saw a hand pressed against the fogged kitchen window, except it was far too long, the fingers bending in impossible directions. The days blurred. Daniel grew paranoid, snapping at shadows, accusing Emma of moving objects she hadn't touched. She caught him staring into the woods for hours, whispering back to the voices no one else could hear. The thing outside wasn't just waiting, it was wearing them down. Finally, they decided to risk the woods, to find the dirt road they came in on. Armed with a lantern and a half-dead compass, they pushed into the trees. But the further they walked, the more wrong it felt. The air smelled of rot. The compass spun wildly, and paths looped back on themselves as if the forest were folding around them. By the time the lantern sputtered out, they realized the truth. They were not lost in the woods. The woods were holding them.